Hi guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about how you can win material in your chess games by trapping your opponent's pieces. Once in a while, we'll be playing a game of chess and our opponent will be a little too hasty, a little too aggressive. They may be coming in hot, throwing their pieces on our side of the board, grabbing that B pawn without verifying that they have left their piece adequate squares to run to. So in this video, we're going to talk about what you can do in those situations to punish these moves from your opponent and trap the piece, win it, and hopefully gain a material advantage. So with that, let's jump right into it. First, I'm going to give you a checklist, a method that you can use to trap your opponent's pieces, and then we will get into some puzzles where you can put your newfound knowledge to the test. So first things first, if you want to trap your opponent's piece, the first thing you must do is identify the vulnerable piece, the piece that doesn't have a lot of squares to run to. Next, we must ask ourselves where that piece can go. Does it have any flight squares? If it does, we need to eliminate those flight squares. And once that piece has nowhere else to go, we can attack it. And finally, we must verify that attacking that piece does not create any new flight squares for it. So that is how you trap the piece. Now let's get into the puzzles and see if we can win some material. All right, we have our first position here. It is white to move. Pause the video and see if you can figure out how to trap and win one of black's pieces. If I'm looking at this position, the first thing I notice is that this queen on g4 is on our side of the board. It has crossed the equator. It is in our territory. And whenever we see one of our opponent's pieces on our side of the board, we should be paying extra attention to it, asking ourselves how we can get rid of this piece. We might also notice that this queen doesn't have many places to run to. It's on our side of the board. It's therefore surrounded by a lot of our pieces. And in fact, she can't even retreat to her own side of the board because her pieces are in the way. So we've identified the vulnerable piece. Now let's ask ourselves where the queen can currently go. Does she have any flight squares? I don't see any. Now we just need to attack the queen while ensuring that we are not creating any new flight squares in the process. We can first calculate this knight h2 move. We're attacking the queen. However, this knight was previously performing the duty of protecting this pawn on h4 and this g5 square. Now the queen can take on h5 and she has an escape. She's no longer trapped. So we've ruled out this knight h2 move, which leaves one other option, rook e4. Knight takes back, we recapture, and now the queen is trapped and we will be winning her. All right, another position, white to move. Pause the video and see if you can win one of black's pieces here. Looking at this position, we see that this knight on a5 is not very happy. As the expression goes, knights on the rim are dim, or perhaps they are grim. I'm not exactly sure. Let me know in the comments what the correct expression is. But either way, this pony on a5 is just not having a fun time. If this knight was in the center of the board, it would be able to go to 8 squares, but instead, it can only go to 4. And if we look at these 4 squares, what do we notice? 2 of them are defended by our pieces, and the other 2 are occupied by black's pieces. So this knight has nowhere to go, which means all we need to do is attack it without creating any new flight squares. We see that it is currently 1 time attacked and 1 time defended. Our queen is attacking it, this queen defends it. So can we add another attacker, therefore winning the trapped knight? Bishop d2. Black has no way to defend, so we are going to be winning the knight. Another example here, white to move again. Pause the video and see if you can figure this one out. So we notice that this knight on c3 is in our camp. It is in our territory, and whenever we see a piece in our territory, we need to ask how we can get rid of it. Once again, if we look at where this knight can go, we see it currently doesn't have anywhere to go. These squares are either defended by our pieces or occupied by black's. This knight doesn't have a lot of mobility. We already have 1 attacker on it, but it's also defended. So this would be an even trade, and by the time things are said and done, black's rook would be down here on the 3rd rank, and soon this other rook is coming to c8, and it's just not a very pleasant position for white. So we want to avoid that if we can. So how can we add another attacker to this knight and therefore win the piece? There are 3 possible ways we can attack this knight. However, only one is correct, but we can take a look at all 3 options. First, we may look at bringing this a rook over to c1, but this rook was currently defending this a2 square. So now the knight has this a2 square, and by the time we move our rook, this knight has escaped and everything is fine for black. So moving the a rook to c1 doesn't work. What about moving the e rook to c1? Kind of similar story. This rook was doing something. It was protecting this e2 square. So now the knight can jump over here. This is actually a double attack with check. So that leaves us with one other option to win this trapped knight, and that is rook e3. It still defends this e2 square, so the knight can't run over here, and we are going to be winning that horse. Okay, so those were some simple examples of how you can use that checklist to trap and win your opponent's material. However, it's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes we will need to prepare the combination, and that's what we're going to go through in these examples. So looking at this position again, we see that this queen on d5 has limited mobility. These pieces prevent her from retreating to her own territory. So the only place that she has to go is further into our camp where we have all of our pieces. So we've identified that this queen on d5 is vulnerable. Now we can ask ourselves where this queen can currently go. And the only squares currently available to her are b3 and a2. So is there a way that we can attack this queen while removing these two flight squares? We might immediately start evaluating this bishop c5 move. However, when we play this, the queen can escape to this a5 square. Yes, our queen is looking at it, but it's also protected by the knight. So the queen is safe. The queen's going to be able to escape. Is there a way that we can prepare this combination so that it works, so that that flight square is not an option for the queen? And if you guys recall the video I made on preparatory moves, we might be able to eliminate the defender by playing rook takes c6, the pawn takes back, and now this defender of a5 is gone. So we can attack this queen with bishop c4. We are removing these two flight squares, and the queen has lost this a5 square, so therefore we are going to be winning the queen. All right, another position here, white to move. See if you can solve this one. We know the theme of the video is trapping, and naturally we see that this bishop on e5 has limited mobility. It doesn't have many places to go. It is approaching our side of the board. It's surrounded by our pieces, and its own pieces are also limiting the places it can go over here. But actually, we also might notice that the only defender of this bishop is this queen. So can we lure this queen to this e5 square where it will also have limited mobility and we can possibly trap it? We can play rook takes e5, the queen takes back, and now the queen, she doesn't have a lot of places she can go. So we've identified the vulnerable piece, which we have lured to this vulnerable square. Now we ask ourselves where the flight squares are. Where can this queen currently go? And she can go to d6, d7, or to g5 where our bishop is. Is there a way that we can attack this queen while also removing these flight squares? Bishop f4. The queen is trapped and we are going to be winning her. Okay, another position here, white to move. Pause the video, see if you can trap one of black's pieces. Right away, I'm noticing this queen on b6 is vulnerable. She currently can't go back to her own territory because our queen and this bishop protect this diagonal, and the rook defends this d-file. So the only place the queen can come is further onto our side of the board, which should cue us to the fact there may be an opportunity to trap this queen. So where can the queen currently go? What are the current flight squares? She can go to c5 because it's defended by the bishop and the only attacker is the queen. She can go to b4 or she can go to b2. So these are the current flight squares. How can we eliminate these flight squares while also attacking the queen? First, we can chase the queen by playing knight a4. This removes two of these flight squares, protects this pawn, and keeps the queen from wandering off here. So the only place she can currently go is to b4. And now we can play rook d4. We are defending our knight and attacking the queen, and the queen is trapped, so we will be winning the queen. All right, another position, white to move. Pause the video, see if you can figure it out. What is the vulnerable piece here? The first thing I notice is this knight on d5. It is very strong. It's very well positioned, and therefore we should want to get rid of it. It's very annoying. How can we attack this knight? But looking at this, we actually see the knight can simply retreat to c7 if we try and attack it, and I don't see a possibility of us really winning that right now. But we might also notice that this bishop on f6 doesn't have many squares to run to. It doesn't have anywhere to go right now, actually. So is there a way that we can accomplish two things at once? kick this knight away while also winning this bishop on f6. So we can use this concept of targeting, which again, if you need a refresh, you can check out my video that I made on preparatory moves. But this concept of targeting is positioning the attacker with tempo. So we can actually kick this knight away by playing e4. The knight's going to retreat. And on the next move, we can play e5. And this bishop is trapped. Therefore, we're going to be winning the bishop. Okay, new position. This time it is black to move. Pause the video, see if you can figure this one out. Once again, we notice that our opponent's queen is on our side of the board. And we don't like this. So we're looking at this queen. We're saying, we don't want you here. Can we attack you? Where can this queen currently go? Really, the only place is across this light square diagonal. She can't come over here to this A file because this rook defends. She can't come anywhere over here because our pieces all defend this. So this is the only saving grace for this queen. Is there a way we can attack the queen while also removing these squares? Wouldn't it be nice if we could play this bishop d3 move? That would accomplish just that, but we currently can't because this knight is in the way. So there are a few options we might consider here. First, we might look at what happens if we play knight c3, attacking the queen again. Now, white recaptures. We can play our bishop move, but white actually has a strong counterattack here, which is rook d1, pinning our knight to our queen. So if we take their queen, they take ours, and actually white is better here. So that is not going to work for us. And we might also look at what happens if knight takes d2, but we end up in a very similar situation. So the correct move here is actually knight takes g3. We're threatening the rook, pawn takes back, and then we have bishop d3, and we will be winning the queen. Okay, and this is the last position. It is a little more tricky. We have to calculate a few different lines, but pause the video and see if you can trap one of black's pieces. Once again, our opponent's queen just so aggressively placed on our side of the board. It is surrounded by our pieces, and this queen cannot retreat to her own territory. So we've identified the vulnerable piece. Where can this queen currently go? I don't see anywhere, do you? The bishops take away these diagonals, and she can't come down here because the pawns defend. So the queen actually doesn't have anywhere to go, which means we just need to successfully attack this queen without creating any flight squares. How can we attack the queen? We might start looking at this bishop g5 move. Obviously, we can't play this yet because the queen would just take our bishop. So can we prepare this move? And there are two ways we can prepare this. So let's first look at this queen d2 move. The engine doesn't love it, as you can tell, so this probably is not the best option. Black plays d6, and now we say, okay, we can go forward and attack this queen. We're going to be winning the queen. We didn't consider all of black's best responses here because in this case, they can actually push the pawn to e3, attacking our queen. And now if we take back, the queen has a flight square. She can go to e4 and the queen is safe. It doesn't work. We need to always consider our opponent's best responses, which leaves the option of queen c1. Obviously, we are threatening bishop g5. So black can go to their PC-Mike acronym. Refer back to my video about defenses if you need a refresh on that. And after going through their options, they may find that the best solution is a counterattack. Does black have any good counterattacks here? Knight h5. And if you're raising an eyebrow and saying, what does that do? I can still go forward with my plan and attack this queen. You probably see the threat now. If we go ahead and take this queen, the knight can come down to e2, take our bishop, and win our queen because this is a double attack against the king and the queen. So as soon as we see this knight come to h5, we need to ask ourselves what black's intentions are. What are they threatening? And hopefully see that this knight f4 move is a real threat for us. So how can we defend against it while still keeping this queen trapped? We can play g3. We are defending against this square, so the knight can no longer come here, and we are attacking the queen. So the queen's going to go to h3, and then we still have our attack with bishop g4, thus winning the queen. So that is how you can trap your opponent's pieces and win a material advantage in your chess games. I hope this video is helpful for you. If it was, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up so I know to make more like this. Let me know in the comments if you made it to this part in the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button so we can all work on getting better at the game of chess together. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.